Hey folks, had one of our community members email in with some great episode ideas that would love to see Eric and myself or Paul and myself cover on the show. And one of them was the case of a solo sysadmin. So you're a solo sysadmin, you've just been promoted or you've picked up a job where you're the only sysadmin, or maybe the previous sysadmin left and you got promoted and they're not replacing the second person or whatever, right? You're in a case where you are the solo sysadmin. What do? What should you prioritize? What type of documentation you need? What kind of challenges should you expect to run into? These are all questions that Eric and I are going to answer on today's show. So we've got that and lots more in today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hey everyone, welcome to SysAdmin Weekly. This is the podcast by sysadmins for sysadmins and dedicated to all the tireless tech folks working out there in the trenches day in and day out to keep the digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Serwich, and we are recording this episode 53, if my counting is correct, on July 16th, 2026. I had that cough going on for the entire intro, and I managed to get through the intro. But anyway, I've got my co-host, Eric Siron, with me today. How's it going, Eric?
I'm good. How are you doing, bud?
Doing good. Can't complain. Been traveling for work, been doing the conference thing, so it's not sure what time zone I'm in currently. I'm joking. I do know what time zone I'm in, but anyway, it's been good. I can't complain. So we've got a great topic lined up for today's show, and I have to give a special shout out to one of our community members, Bart. Back in April, sent the SysAdmin Weekly mailbox, contact@sysadminweekly.com. Sent us an email with a bunch of topics that they wanted to see covered on the show. And I have to fall on my own sword here and apologize that it took me, 3 months to get back to this email. It was one of those situations where, like, you see the email and you're like, whoa, hey, that's really cool. Like, that's awesome. And then something shiny pops up on the other monitor, and I got distracted or whatever, So my apologies. It took us that long to get back to you. But yes, special shout out to one of our community members, Bart. Today's episode is from Bart's list. And today we are talking about the case of a sole sysadmin. Where do you start, right? Now, maybe you got hired as the sole sysadmin, or your department got downsized and now you are the sole sysadmin, or you got promoted and the old sysadmin left, whatever, right? You are the only sysadmin. You're the only person standing between, successful business and oblivion. What do you do, right? And so maybe it's not quite as epic and legendary as that, but you get the idea. And so that's what we're going to be talking about on today's episode. But, of course, we have our usual show plugs and our recurring segments to get to before we start with that. So I will start with my show plugs. So, again, if you are new to the show, welcome. Hope you enjoy your time here. We do some kind of long intros here at SysAdmin Weekly, but it's a good time. We talk tech, we talk a couple of news stories, we talk about the geeky, nerdy things that we've been working on in our spare time. If you want to get straight to the core topic of the show, you can use those chapter buttons either on whatever platform you're using to hop straight to the main topic, or if you just want to use the time slider and go to about 20 minutes in, give or take 2 minutes, is usually about where we start the main topic. So if you want to find all the links associated with the show, you can go out to www.sysadminweekly.com and you'll find links to Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. You'll find a link to our newsletter as well, which is newsletter.sysadminweekly.com, which it's a companion newsletter that includes some weekly links, some weekly tools, some commentary by yours truly, and a bunch of other great, useful things. So be sure to check that out as well. We also have the GitHub discussion forums, which are out on GitHub. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Feel free to come and hang out there, check out and see what's going on. Other than that, Eric, what do you think? Should we do our News React segment?
Hit it.
All right. So The News React segment portion of the show here is the part of the show where my co-host and I we pick a news item that caught our eye and we discuss. So, Eric, I'm going to let you go first this week. What do you got, my friend?
Well, I didn't read it very much. They're apparently they have decided the hot patching thing is going to be kind of an Azure connected. If you're Arc enabled, you get hot patching now. So I'm still trying to figure out because it was paid, like you had to pay a certain amount or have certain things, but now it looks like if you're Arc enabled, you're going to get hot patching. So I want to check that
Interesting.
out. That's the Windows Server hot patching. I should be more clear.
That is one of those features that I could see being very, very useful, right? I think we actually talked about hot patching briefly all the way back. I'm going on memory here, so I might be wrong, but all the way back to I think episode 3, 4, when we talked about the deprecation of WSUS.
Hmm.
Boy, that was like way back at the start of the show. I think we might have covered hot patching there briefly. I have to go back and look and see if that segment is outdated, but if not, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Um, so yeah, that's an interesting tidbit of information there. I'm gonna have to check that out personally
I also want to
because
fact check myself
um,
too before I get too deep into it, because like I said, I saw the headline and then like, oh, I need to read that later. And part of it was the questioner's like, well, how much time is this going to save you? And I'm like, well, me, it's not going to. Time is not the what I'm going to save. My entire everything is
right,
sorted around patching when nobody's using it and I'm asleep. So right, it's more
right,
about uh, maybe not having to put in quite as many guardrails around reboots.
right. And I think hot patching vastly. I'm going on memory here. It's been a while since I've looked at hot patch, but if I remember correctly, it vastly reduces the number of reboots to I think 4 per year. If I remember correctly.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to
So
see how well they
again,
can.
going on.
I'm just.
Sorry,
I
go
think
ahead.
it'll be interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how closely they can adhere to that 4 per year, because they're going to have to
Right.
put critical stuff ahead of hitting that SLA. At least they should. So it'll be interesting. I'm curious.
It will, and this. We've been seeing a lot of vulnerabilities, discovered vulnerabilities popping up. I mean, we just had a record-breaking Patch Tuesday here, this last Patch Tuesday, and so I suspect, as they update. I mean, some of those patches must have to do with the core Windows kernel. I mean, are you gonna push a security patch, until a quarterly reboot cycle? I don't know, big question mark there whether the current ecosystem will allow that or not. But again, that's just conjecture on my part. All right. Well, while you're looking there, I suppose I can go over my news item, if that works for you. My news item is about 1Password, and I will preface this by saying I am personally not a user of 1Password, but this article caught my eye. This is out on macrumors.com. I'll put a link to it in the show notes here. And the headline reads, 1Password for Claude lets AI log in without seeing your passwords. And let me quote a couple items throughout the article here. So I'm quoting the article. When Claude wants to sign into a website, 1Password shows the user which credential Claude wants access to and why. After the user approves the request, 1Password adds the credential directly to the page. Access is limited to the current task and ends when the task has been completed. So the 1Password team says that after a password is autofilled, the app checks to make sure secrets were not exposed on the page. And there was one other section here that caught my eye too. Right here. So again, I quoting the article again, the 1Password browser extension is also being updated with agentic mode, which gives users control over browser-based AI agents. When an AI agent takes over, the 1Password extension locks down so passwords are not exposed. So, couple things that caught my eye about this. One, um, we've been talking in the security community for a while now about how using agentic AI, you really, really have to be very aware of the guardrails. You really have to focus on building that little box that your AI agent resides and operates within, right? It should only have access to what it needs. It should only have the permissions that it absolutely, least privilege, all those things that we talk about in the security space. And uh, what kind of drew my eye here is this is all talk about letting Claude operate in the browser. And first off, this is my security brain talking a little bit here. And folks that watch the show, they know I love Claude. Claude does an amazing job. It helps me with a ton of things. I've done whole episodes on Claude, right? Um, but would I trust Claude to run inside my browser? The thing I do banking in, the thing I do communication in, the thing I do all the things you use a web browser for. That's a security boundary I don't know if I personally am ready for yet, and I would urge everyone to ask themselves that same question. Now, that said, what we see here with 1Password is they are taking one of the core concerns that the industry has had about agentic AI, and that is access to secrets. If, in this case, as the article says, this is a case where Claude can call for a secret and 1Password simply fills in the password field without handing that secret over to Claude, that's a win, right? That is the security industry starting to put some effective segmentation and guardrails around the autonomous operation of AI agents. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this as we move forward with agents and, future generative AI instances. So I think that was mainly my big takeaway from the article was like, okay, we've been musing that something like this was going to happen eventually. We'd start seeing some nice integrations, things like that. Again, the one other caveat, like I said, me personally, not ready for AI in my browser. I don't know when that'll happen. And now I'll get off my soapbox and I'll stop being grumpy sysadmin. So anyway, I see you sent me the link to that article, Eric. Anything you want to add before we move on to Nerd React?
I kind of blitzed through it again, and it still looks like, yeah, as long as it's ARC enabled. It did say something about Azure Update Manager, which I don't think that's free. Is it?
If I recall correctly, it is not. Well, there's a cost for Arc too. It's been long enough since I looked at that. I don't recall.
Well, yeah, that's
Um,
weird because you can ARC enable it for nothing. It's just when you start doing things with it that it costs money.
yeah,
So,
that's like I said.
like,
It's been a while since I looked at it. I want to say $5 per system per month is what I seem to remember in my brain, but again, it's been a while since I've looked at it.
yeah, that's not going to be that's too much in my opinion. So we'll see. But
Yeah,
hmm.
I'm gonna have to dust off that WSUS deprecation episode because we talked about Arc and Hot Patch in that episode. So anyway, what do you think? Move on to Nerd React.
Nerd
All
hour, yes,
right,
let's hit it.
Nerd Hour. Yeah, what is this like? This is 4 episodes in a row I have done this where I've combined the names of the two segments. My brain is apparently stuck in a loop, right? Yes. Nerd Hour, the Nerd Hour segment of the show. This is the segment of the show where my co-host and I we talk about the geeky, nerdy things we've been doing in our spare time, either in our personal lab or our professional world. And so I guess selfishly, I'll go first on this one, Eric. So what I have been working on, and it's related to patching. Well, it is patching. Debian 13.6 was released. So Debian 13 is the current stable version of Debian. And as folks on the show know, basically everything in my lab is Debian Linux. So that's what I've been working on. It's not, some super cool, super sexy tech project, but it's more of the the standard fair sysadmin work that has to be done, right? And so been working on getting the lab updated to 13.6. The one thing that stood out to me, if there are any fellow Debian users out in the audience, is that FW upd has been updated to have the ability to update secure boot certificate authority, key exchange keys, and revocation databases. So, and they actually go out and call out that the 2013 UFI Secure Boot CA installed by default on most PCs back in 2013, right, is expired. And so basically this is them putting the framework in place to handle that. And I don't often see this wording in their documentation very often. And I'm quoting, I'll put the release notes here so folks can take a look at it, but I'm quoting the release notes. Users are strongly advised to apply CA, KEC, and DBX updates from their system OEM in line with our guidance below, and they link their wiki. So again, basically urging people to get their system firmware, their update, get the secure boot stuff patched and good to go based on your OEM vendor. So anyway, that is my nerd react. That's kind of what I've been working on. How about you, Eric?
So I have a fun little task. I've been doing, for a long time, I've been kind of writing on my Nagios experiments and what I've been doing. And I have it connected to Active Directory. I think I haven't written on it in years, but I know I did write, here's how you connect it to Active Directory. And the way I had it built was with basic auth. It's Apache is what does your web portion. And so I had it built with basic auth, and then it was like, all right, well, I'm encapsulating it with TLS and everything. So I didn't care, but been told, well, we should probably get off of basic auth. So I have been experimenting with connecting SAML authentication through Active Directory Federation services. And kind of like, well, just in my head, it's like, well, it took me, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours playing around with all the different authentication stuff and figuring out LDAP and, okay, what happens when I flip this switch and all that. And okay, I felt pretty confident on it. Like I was naively thinking SAML would go more or less the same way, and it did not. So to make it a little bit more interesting, I do not have powers in this particular domain. So I am relaying questions and things to the domain admin, who of course has a million other things to do besides deal with me. So a whole lot of, I don't want to spend more of his time than I have to. I don't know what I'm doing. I have been feeding a lot of my issues and like, here's what I want to do and everything through Copilot and letting it kind of guide me. Still not, because I don't know what I'm doing. I cannot tell you if it's hallucinating or if it's wrong, or I
Right.
just don't know enough. I know that I'm making incremental progress, you know. And one thing I found I like about Copilot though is I'll go in on one thing and say, here's my logs, here's my error logs, here's my configuration. And then it'll think about it and go, okay, here's what I think is happening, do this, do that, and so on and so forth. So I still haven't, because it doesn't work yet, I still don't know if it's telling me incorrect. I don't know. I don't know yet. And like I said, there's a lot of moving parts here, but it's
Right.
been kind of a journey. And now it's like when I get done with this, if I get this right, I'm going to publish that. That's a lot. But to have SAML auth for your monitoring system, I mean, how that's okay. Then of course it's Apache. Nagios just happens to be the service I'm protecting on the back end of it, but it's really
Right.
Apache and Active Directory through SAML. So
And I
we'll
mean,
see.
Apache is well supported. So, I mean, I'd be surprised if the pieces didn't exist that I guess that's me saying I'd be surprised if you were not successful. Let me put it that
Yeah.
way.
I think in hindsight, again, walking into this with the idea that, well, I just need some nudging and guidance and I'll be done. What I would probably do if I started over from scratch would be I would just Google it and find a nice article written by somebody who's already done this rather than letting Copilot help me out. But it
Yeah.
is nice when Copilot is like, this is the exact thing to put into your configuration file to make it work. So I can't complain about that too much because no translating from somebody else's environment to mine. Copilot is just like, this is what you need to type into your file and this should work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I do like AI for tasks like that and command line syntax because I don't know why I could have typed in a command 2 minutes ago with the relevant syntax, and if you asked me what the syntax was right now in this moment, I would have forgotten already. I don't know what it is. Like I just suck at remembering command line syntax. Even though I spend a ton of time in the command line, I do make heavy usage of man pages and help files. So maybe that's how I managed to get through. So anyway.
All right. An aside, a segue from that, my friend. I have often thought, like, if I had to sit in a class and do a test the old way that we had to do it, where you study, 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 and then just go in and hope to God you remember things on the exam, there's
Right.
no way in 2026 that I could do anything, even basic things that I'm an expert about. I think I would fail horrifically because, but I need to look it up and verify before I click the OK button here.
Yup.
You know what I mean? It's like, even if I'm sure I know the answer, it's like, I still would like to Google that real quick. And they kind of frown on that in the testing areas.
I look at that as like, okay, doing your due diligence, and I think that's especially when you're dealing with production systems. When I click that button, I want to be 100% damn sure that I know what's going to happen when I click that button. You know what I mean?
Because it's like the test, the exam is now production. Like all the way through, we were in test in the
Uh-huh.
classroom and everything else. But as soon as you go into the exam portion, that's prod. Now you can't get that one wrong. And like, oh no, I'm so used to. Let me double check myself here. And they're like, no, man, you have 50 minutes and 60 questions. You can't do that.
Yeah, I think it was boy, who was it? I have a lot of this going on in this episode. I keep remembering things that we covered in very old episodes. There was a vendor that was doing it was Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft for certain exams was allowing access to docs.microsoft.com during the exam. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, that was Microsoft. I'm gonna have to
Of course,
find
I
a
was
link for that.
thinking more about a traditional classroom, like your algebra, English,
Yeah.
and all that, more
Yep.
so than because I haven't sat for a certification exam since. Oh, I upgraded MCSA from Server 2000 to Server 2003. That was the last one that I sat. How I I I know it's changed since then.
Just a little bit, but I have no doubt of your Windows server prowess, my friend. So, uh,
Well, I think you have more confidence in it than I do. I don't know.
oh, I've known you for a long time. I no doubts, no doubts. So, anyway, well, speaking of Windows Server prowess and sysadmin prowess in general. Again, today we are talking about the theoretical case. Well, not theoretical to some people, but the case where you are the sole sysadmin. Everything is burning down around you. The help desk phone is ringing off the hook. Servers are offline. You are the person standing between, successful digital operations of the business and, complete and utter disaster. What do you do? Go. Right? That's what we are talking about in today's episode. And so, to kind of set the scene here, I mean, for the vast majority of my career, I've been on a team of other engineers, right? Uh, but I haven't always had backup. Not in every case. I've done large projects where I was the guy, but there was also a probably 4-year period during my MSP days where I was basically the on-site guy, the virtual sysadmin, as it were. And I say virtual because I worked for an MSP, but I was assigned to one large nonprofit. I was their sysadmin for 3-4 days a week, basically, for several years. So much so to where at that particular stage of my life, we had actually moved to the town that that nonprofit was in because that's how much time I spent at this place. And so, um, like I said, I was essentially their sysadmin for 3 or 4 years. And I did have the benefit, right, that I could pick up the phone and I could reach other engineers and bounce ideas off, but largely, um, pretty much on my own during that stage. So a lot of the what I draw on for today's episode will kind of be through that particular lens. And so when when you're the sole sysadmin, I mean, like, you own everything, right? I mean, you own the firewall, the servers, the online services, uh, the printer that has broken down 10 times and nobody wants to pay to replace it, right? Um, yeah, I mean, you are the person. And so I think for me, Eric, the biggest thing I want to convey in this particular situation is there has to be very much a mindset shift. Maybe a mindset shift if you have come from a team situation to now the sole sysadmin. Maybe it's more of a defining baseline. Maybe I'll use that term if you are a brand new sysadmin and being a sole sysadmin is your first job. You need to have the expectation of yourself that when you are the only person running tech for an organization, it is damn near impossible to do everything, right? There's so many needs, so many jobs put on the sysadmin that is you're probably not going to be able to do all of them. So really, not only do your tech skills need to be well developed, you also have to have the ability of, you need to be able to define what are the things that I am not going to work on this week. And for me, what that looked like sometimes was like, okay, I know in the back of my mind that there's more going on this week that I'm going to be able to get to. A lot of times I'd go through a week and my task list was defined by whoever was screaming the loudest. Right? And that was a very common situation. You just kind of slog through the week until things quiet down and you can get back to your rhythm. But that's kind of how I look at that and how I kind of set the stage here for the rest of the conversation. But what do you think, Eric? Anything you want to add before I move on?
No, I mean, there's a whole lot to all of this. Because you wear so many hats that also, as the lone IT person, you also have to be political and you have to be able to navigate
Yep.
that with some skill. I mean, I think we're going to hit on a lot of the points I have in my head as we go through, and I don't want to waste the episode, just giving you a preamble and then walk into it. But yeah, why don't we just go forward and I'll just let my stuff come out organically? How about that?
That sounds good. That sounds good. So I'm putting myself in the shoes of the sysadmin that just took over the job. They are I'm now the lone sysadmin of, I don't know, ABC Corp. We'll go with that. No, wait. Andy's Sandwich Shop, right? Because all the kids in school, they couldn't say my last name, so they called me Andy Sandwich. So I'm now the lone sysadmin of Andy's Sandwich Shop, right? A regional sandwich chain. There, I've set the stage. Okay. So one of the first things that I'm going to do as a sysadmin in this particular situation is, one, I know that I need to have a firm understanding of everything that is within my environment. But at this stage of me taking over the job, it's going to be really hard to wrap my head around everything that is in the environment right away. In my opinion, you have to very much have a triage before projects type of mentality, because you're there to fix things, you're there to keep the business running. There's going to be a time and place for improving the existing infrastructure. There's going to be a time and place for documentation, upgrading things. First thing you should always prioritize though, right, is keeping things online, right? That's kind of the sysadmin ethos, right? We keep the business running before all else. So, I have talked to sysadmins that have kind of struggled with that, right? Hey, I got all these projects I have to get to, but I also have to keep the business running. I will say right now, for the sake of your job, for the sake of your sanity and not getting yelled at and pestered all the time, handle the triage first. The projects will be there. And, um, I think uh, that is the number one thing, the number one place where I would start, right? You need to find out what's actively on fire. You need to identify those key stakeholders within the organization to find out what they're responsible for. Is any of their stuff on fire that is in your purview? Um, right? I'm just kind of looking through my notes here, but that's probably where I would start. I don't know if you want to add anything, Eric, but that's where my brain goes first.
So we're gonna keep going with the idea that you're new, you're the new person, and you own it all. So one thing I would tell you to do, carry pen and paper or pencil and paper. I
Yep.
had an amazing boss once, and he turned me on to actually still have it sitting right here. This is the ARC system, ARC. You can buy this at I get it at Staples, but what it does, you get it's a ring binder, pretty obvious, nothing odd about that. But what happens is these pages come out like that, and then you can just like rearrange them if you need to. Just put it in somewhere else. And he turned me on to a system he learned that I absolutely love. So I use a pencil, not a pen. All right, then you'll say, all right. So you come in here and so for people who are listening, I'm holding this up to the screen so you can watch what I'm doing. But so each, the way this comes is there's two lines of one gray and then two lines of white, two lines of gray, two lines of white. You can use them however you want. But what I'll do is I'll go in and go like router. Oh, there's no way anybody can read that. Router in back room, something like that. And then down here I might say update firmware. Okay.
So you've
So,
defined the thing and what needs to be done with the thing, the router in
yep.
this case.
Come up with any system that makes sense to you. That's not really the crux of it. Come up with a system that makes sense enough to remind you of what you need to do. And like if this goes over here because you're putting out fires for 3 weeks, when you pick it back up, you need to be able to know what you were talking about. So
Yeah.
whatever system works for you. Now at this point, this is the really important part of the system that I want to show you is so there's a priority box here and a checkbox here. It doesn't matter. I have always used the one on the left, use the one on the right. If it doesn't matter. Point is, when it's empty, that means I haven't done anything on it, or I need to do something. Okay, if it's empty. Now let's say I called the vendor. The last thing I did was I called the vendor, and that's one of the reasons for a pencil. Like I called the vendor to uh, called vendor for web access. Called vendor, and I'm just going to scribble real quick. Here's called vendor. Now, because I can't do anything until the vendor calls me back, what I do is I put 2 lines that don't quite touch. It's diagonal line from the top right of the box toward the bottom left, and they don't quite connect. That to me is a sign that I am waiting on someone else to do something. There's nothing I can do with this right now. So when I'm going back over my list, right away, I know don't spend time on that one unless maybe it's been a
Yep.
while, call somebody. And you might want to write down, like I called the vendor on, July 17th. So that way, if it comes out and it's like, September, maybe you do need to do something. But this kind of gives you a thing. And then if the vendor does their part, but I need to do something, then I'll change the second line again, and then I'll clear that box. Because with the box empty, that means now it's in my court again, and I need to do something.
Right, right.
And probably the most important thing that he talked to me about is when you're done, let's say that all done, and it's getting worse, my writing gets worse, then I put a full X into that box. So
Yep.
it's done. But
Right.
I don't want to get in here, and you can, like, if you want, scratch it out, but you need to be able to read it because you're going to take notes, more permanent notes, maybe, or not. You may not, but at least you can say, well, I did this. This is done. and you can put a date, whatever you need. And then that paper can then go wherever you need it to. You can keep it, you can get rid of it. And there's a whole lot of studies done because a lot of people are like, well, I just use my phone or whatever. People don't do that though. They get it in their head they're going to do it, but then they don't.
Right.
This you will do,
Yep.
right? And it's easier to it's just easier across the board. So I I'm as digital as the next person. I'm not telling you go old school just because I'm an old man. I'm saying that study after study has said this is the way to go. Writing things down helps you remember this kind of organizational system. And again, this is a real simple system. There's not a whole lot to it. If you don't want to come up with something complicated, because again, you won't remember it, you won't use it, you have all these problems. And I've been using this system now since he showed it to me 15 years ago, and I still use it for everything.
I think
So,
that's I think that's fantastic advice because I do something very similar. I use the bullet journal method is what I do. And bulletjournal.org I think is where that's at. But I think the one thing that the two systems have in common is um you're almost writing short form. You write it in a way that you can write it down quickly, but still understand what needs to be done with that particular item. And why that's important, at least for me, is when you're the sole sysadmin and you're getting pulled left, right, and center again
mhm,
and again, you might be having to jot down little pieces of information, little to do items
mhm,
in 10 seconds between conversations, right? And so same with you, Eric, is I've got one on my desk here as well too, a bullet journal, and I've tried again and again to make them digital, like do it inside of Markdown, right? So I get all the benefits of that, but like something about pen and paper, right? I don't know what it is, just something about pen and paper. It just
yes.
sticks better in my
It is a
brain.
whole thing. It sticks better. You remember, there's something about the physical action. So I'm going to wind up plugging another product, but this is more of a system I came up with on my own. Rocketbook. And according to the retailer I used to buy these from, they are not as popular, so you can only get them online now or something. But anyway, so this one, it's not different. It doesn't have all the fancy stuff, which is why I can't use it to replace my Arc. But this is an erasable pen.
Oh,
And then,
really?
so when you do pages and pages, so there's a QR code, you can scan it, it goes digital. You can do OCR if you want to
Interesting.
do something more permanent from it. And then, so like you can use your eraser for just like small things, but when you're done with it, you just get a wet rag, wipe the whole page off. So the whole book is reusable. So
That's
this is a
cool.
little bit different because it violates. So in the ARC system, I never delete anything, right? I don't erase or wipe out an entire thing
Right.
ever. There's always that permanent record. Here, if you uh, wipe it out or whatever, if you didn't scan it, make it digital, it's gone. So
Yeah.
that could be a problem. And they're also the way the ink in this works, it's heat sensitive. So like if you're setting your coffee on it, you'll wind up erasing stuff. So we got to be careful.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
there are issues. I do like this, but I use this more as my to-do list and reminder, more of the less about the things in progress that may have multiple things I need to come back to.
Yeah.
Right. So I was giving you the example of I'm going to have this device and I'm going to do the first part. Then the vendor's going to do something, and it's off and on, and I'm coming back and forth. This I don't feel like would work out as well because the paper design isn't like just not built for that, I guess. But it
Yeah.
is good for long term notes, and part of it, like I really wanted to kind of show the system, but also where this came up in the conversation was really about when you're new, you gotta you gotta start somewhere on your documentation for yourself,
Yep.
right? And writing it down is the way to go.
Yep.
You'll remember it better, it'll stick better, all the things. So whatever system you use or none at all, even if you're just wildly scribbling things into a notebook, that's still better than, "Oh, I'll remember this," or "I'll have to just learn this." Any of that. There's just write it down. Take the second.
Right.
And I probably should have opened the entire thing. I wanna something I I've trained a lot of admins over the years. Hear me right now. Something is always on fire.
Yep.
That is your career. That is what you have chosen. So when you're like, "Oh my god, I'm on fire. I have all these problems. I gotta deal with all this stuff. I don't have time to write things down. I don't have to." Yes, you do, because it's still gonna be on fire.
Yep.
So take the beat, write something, whatever, chill out, because it's not going to not be on fire when you're done. And even when you put that fire out, there's another one right behind it, and that's forever until you retire. So just all right, just become comfortable with living in a burning forest, because that's what IT is.
Yep. Yeah, one thing I picked up early in my career, this was from a mentor of mine, and that, like you said, there's always going to be something on fire. And you're going to have those moments where somebody comes to your door or somebody calls you and the sky is falling, right? Like the worst thing ever in the world has happened and you need to fix it right now. I started doing this thing where I say, okay, yep, I'll take a look at it. I'll get back to you here shortly. And then I will take like 5 minutes for myself, right? To think about, like, okay, what are the couple of things it might be? What am I going to look at first? And just kind of, I do that way I don't kind of fall into that same trap of, oh my God, the sky is falling, right? That's the main reason that I personally do that, is because, okay, gonna go into this with a level head, right? Just, we're gonna fix it, you know?
Yep. People
And
don't make
so,
good decisions when their
yep,
adrenaline's up. So take a
yep,
beat,
got,
write things down,
yep,
and I
take
got to
that.
tell you something. I know you know this, Andy, and anybody we have new may just be starting to figure this out. Is you're just as much of a therapist as you are anything else. So you got to be, when you
Yep,
go in there, you got to be confident and calm and like, yeah, this is broken. This is horrible. I know you're not having fun, right?
yep,
And the more you put them at ease, like the fire, it puts itself out as far as the really hot parts of it. As long as you can kind of, just be chill. Yeah, yeah. I know this sucks. I know you're not having fun. I know you need to get that paper done. Oh yeah, I am not your enemy at all, right? And you got to
yep,
kind of manage that. And then by you being calm, you'll calm yourself down. They'll kind of pick up on your tone and they'll follow you, and yeah. And while all that's going on, while you're sort of like, yeah, you're also kind of giving your brain the cycles that it needs to start tackling the problem without, because the worst part
yep,
is when you're sitting there and you're trying to figure stuff out and they're like, are you doing anything? And they're being really agitating. So you get your
they
minute
can
kind
be,
of
yep.
by playing the therapist. Yeah.
The other thing that helps, I found in that triage situation is like, okay, you're working the problem, give the stakeholder, whoever the stakeholder or stakeholders are in that particular situation, right? Who owns the system that you're fixing? Maybe it's the whole business owns it, right? Who's the stakeholder for the whole, right? Um, Over communicate with them while you're triaging things, you know? That way there's no question as to what's going on. The one thing I always used to do when I was triaging an issue, okay, yep, let me work the problem. I will get back to you in 20 minutes. And
Yes.
even if at 20 minutes I didn't have a solution yet, okay, yep, still working on the issue. I've ruled out these things. I'll get back to you in another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
20 minutes to me is like long enough to where you can make some meaningful progress, but not so long that whoever it is you're reporting to is freaking out.
That's a good tactic because I've hit some points that I don't always have the best temper, and I have been much worse in my life. I've mellowed with age, and there have been times when I've looked at somebody's like, I can talk to you about it or I can work on it, but you're going to have to pick one. And it doesn't go over very well, although they usually get the point. So,
Yep.
but what you're doing with that is kind of setting that arm's length boundary. Like, I am working on this and I will talk to you, right? Because there
Yep.
is, I mean, even when I'm like, dude, you're going to have to back off. It's like, I still get what they're upset about. It's not like I don't understand, but it's just like all you're doing is bringing your anxiety to me and making me anxious while I'm trying to fix your problem, and that's not going to go well for you. So knock it off,
Right.
right? And
Especially if you're elbows deep in Active Directory or something like that.
yes, so it it
So,
it it helps very much to, as quickly as you can, kind of learn how to handle people who are. And one thing I've really hated my entire is like, well, users are stupid, and then they do that, and then they start treating users like idiots, and they know what you're doing. they may not know the tech part, but they know when they're being condescended
Belittled.
to and everything
Yep.
else. And also that turns into something that happens to police officers is, cops are never called because things are going well. So they're always dealing with bad things and bad people and bad stuff. And over time, they lose the ability to have empathy for the people that they're serving. And that can
Right.
happen to you in IT as well. So you
Yeah.
have to be mindful
I've
about
seen
that. It's
that.
like these
Yeah.
are real people with real problems, even though they're obnoxious to you, and maybe they are idiots. I don't know, but the more you treat them like idiots, the more they hate you, and the less likely they are to help you or to give you the space. You know what I mean? It's self defeating in all cases to treat your basically your customers poorly. So
Yeah.
it, and
Definitely.
it. Not saying it's going to be fun. You're going to get yelled at. You're going to get all the things, but there's also a side of yeah, they're not really mad at me. They're mad at their problem. They're mad at the situation. They're mad that they slept in and now they have 5 minutes to submit this thing they've known about for 2 weeks and Word lost
Oh
everything
yeah.
and you're the person in front of them and they're going to scream at you for it. So
Right.
it sucks. I'm not saying it doesn't suck. It's just there's a sort of like, yeah, you know what? I'll do the best I can, but you should have got up earlier and say that in your head, not out loud. And what is it? I'm always,
Right.
yeah. I've been told that, or what is that meme that's going around? Is like, I may not say the words, but my face has all the subtitles.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
seen that one. Yep.
yeah, I can be like that too. It's like, mhm, 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 so
Yep.
it's a
Oh,
game.
that's a good
So,
one. Very applicable. Very applicable. So, we spent some time talking about some note-taking methods, documentation. You mentioned starting your own documentation, and this was one of the big points of this episode. I wanted to make sure we really drove home here. Everybody paying attention, right? I have 3 words. 3 words. I'm not going to say the 3 words yet. Hold on. When you're a solo sysadmin, here are the 3 words. Documentation is survival, right? Documentation is survival when you're a solo sysadmin. And I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a place in my MSP days, we onboard a new customer, or there's a customer that called us once every 6 months and they just wanted that one little thing fixed and nothing else. Can't say how many times I've walked into an environment where there was little to no documentation. Something as simple as um, a license key, you know? Hey, we just replaced the secretary's machine and we need to reinstall, I don't know, Office on it or whatever. Oh, okay. Yeah, we could take care of that for you. Do you have a license key? And they look at you really funny, right?
huh?
Well, that's a
Yeah.
case where documentation really helps, documenting the license key.
Hmm.
Again, just one example, but when you're a team of one, like documentation isn't the boring paperwork that you have to do. It's the thing that allows you to take a vacation someday. It's the thing that's um eventually, hopefully, if you are, blessed with budgets, that you can use to train your next hire, right? Somebody who eventually comes on board to help you. So, I I've known a lot of sysadmins that despise documentation. I'm not a fan either, right? I'm not a fan either. When I've just finished a project or finished fixing something and there's always something on fire. Last thing I want to do is take 5 minutes to document it, but you're hurting yourself if you don't. So documentation, in my opinion, is non-negotiable. And the one question I always get when I'm having this particular conversation is like, okay, all right, I agree with you, Andy. Yes, that okay, we need to do documentation, but I've just inherited this environment. I'm the solo sysadmin. Where the hell do I even start? And came up with this idea, right, of the I've been hit by a bus list. So you're the solo sysadmin. If you got hit by a bus, hopefully you don't. Let me let me follow up with that. Hopefully you don't get hit by a bus. But imagine if you got hit by a bus, what would the business need to continue operations? I'm thinking license keys. I'm thinking um, passwords, right? I'm thinking any other authentication mechanism that requires documentation, where applications live, where data lives, how the backups are configured, where's the offsite backup, right? All those types of things. That is the list that you need to create. What vendors do you work with, right? Think about all the things that somebody picking up the pieces after you, let's say they can't talk to you for whatever reason, what would they need in order for IT operations to continue at that business? I don't know if you'd have any other advice to that list I provided. I was just going off the top of my head, Eric, but um, I think I got most of the big ones.
Well, I still wanna really hit it home that whatever you write down is better than nothing. So
Yep.
it's not always a matter of like, "Oh, I need to find a logical place to start." Start with whatever's in front of you. That's fine. You can organize later. Also, wow, I'm just plugging stuff left and right today. I use Greenshot. It is freely supported. I don't know who writes it. I don't know. It's on the internet. Go look at it. It is the
Fantastic.
screenshot tool that I use, and I will tell you there's 2 reasons that so I know that they keep pushing what is the one that's in, Windows 11 now, and I know they work real hard on that and try to make everybody wanna use it, but there's 2 things about Greenshot that put it ahead of everything else, and the first one is, so, like, you're gonna draw a rectangle around something because you wanna take a picture of it. Let's say you miss a little bit. Well, all you click and hold down on the first, and then you can use the arrow keys to move it around to get it right on the pixel you want, drag it to the other end, and then you can again use the arrow keys to so you never mess up. So that's the one thing. The second one, and this is way better, is you take a screenshot and then you can right click on the greenshot icon in your taskbar and say capture last region, which means take a picture of the same part of the screen you just
Yep.
took a picture of. So when I'm installing something that isn't a simple next, next, next finish, if it's any more complicated than that, on each page, Greenshot, and I drop each one of them into a OneNote page. I may not notate it at all. It may just be the series of screenshots, but that's better than nothing, right? And I can
Yeah.
go, oh, what did I put on that thing? I think there was a special thing I typed in. It's right there. I saved it, and it doesn't really take but a half a second. Like the first one you draw is a big deal, right? You get it however precise you want to be. I mean, you can always trim that later too. So maybe just kind of get close. Who cares? Right. And then last region next, last region next, last region next, done.
Yep. Yep.
Right. So make it easier on yourself every chance you get. Don't, because part of it is like, well, if I'm going to do documentation, I need to do it right and I need to do it logically. If that's your mentality, I love it. It's wonderful. You will never even start.
Sure. Yeah. That's good advice. Very good advice, and I love the Greenshot call out, because when I was still running Windows, yeah, I use Greenshot a lot too. I will say, if you're a weirdo like me and you run Linux, Spectacle in KDE does almost the same exact thing, very similar, and so very easy to take screenshots. Um, and yeah, I've never been impressed with the built-in Windows snapshot tool. I mean, it's fine, it works, but to your point, right? If I'm going to be taking a lot of the same region, Greenshot all day long, all day long.
Yeah, I know there's, somebody at Microsoft, and I used to actually remember her name. I don't know her personally, but I read a lot of her stuff, who was, like, the owner of that product and really proud of it. And, all I wanna say is I'm not really sure who their target audience is, but I'm not it. Because it does stuff that I do not care about. It's like, "That's cool, but I'll never use that." What
Yeah.
I need is repetitive, and I need to be able to take a very precise square. I don't need to draw fancy pictures with my screen capture tool. That doesn't seem terribly useful to me. Okay, I'm sure it works for somebody. They wouldn't put all the effort into it, but you know what I mean. Where Greenshot is seems to be built around people like me that I just need a picture, man.
Right, right. So, you're the solo sysadmin. You've got things triaged. You've started getting some documentation in place. You know, you're at a good place, right? Now you can start making some improvements to lessen your workload over time to make things a little bit more sane for yourself, right? And so you kind of have to start thinking about at this stage, what can you put in place to give yourself some time back? And I think of two areas here, one that you're probably expecting and one that maybe you aren't. So the first is automation. This is the one I'm sure everybody was expecting us to talk about as part of this as part of this conversation. If you're the solo sysadmin, you need to do absolutely as much as you can with as little as possible. And it's just simple math. I mean, one person can't hand patch 50 machines again and again and again and again by hand. Like eventually you're going to fall behind on that cadence. Something's going to happen. A vulnerability is going to get taken advantage of, and now you have even more problems on hand, right? Again, that's just an example. And so this is where you want to start thinking about ways that you can automate things. Eric, you talked about hot patch during the nerd hour segment. Hey, I said it right. I said it right. I didn't say nerd react. I said nerd hour. I'm so proud of myself because I've kept messing that up over the last 4 episodes. Anyway,
Gold star, gold star.
right. And so, again, hot patch, any patching utility to help take the load off, any, uh, uptime or high availability type tools. I will use Hyper-V and Live Migration as an example. The ability to keep virtual machines online while you patch things, or an automated process patches things. That way you can do patching during the middle of the day, potentially, depending on the business you work for. PowerShell scripts. I still think of it. I had a very, my very first IT mentor in my very first IT job, he would always say to me, Andy, the key to IT is laziness. Now, he wasn't advocating for not doing work. That's not what he was saying. His point was you automate as much as you can so that you can be as lazy as you possibly can, right? That was his whole point. And well, lazy is subjective because we were never lazy in that job, but his whole point was automation. He's actually the guy that got me hooked on Debian all those years ago. So anyway, but yes, automate as much as you can. If you have to do a process more than once or twice, probably look at creating some sort of automated process for it. And you know what? Document the heck out of it, right? Document why that automated process exists, where it runs from, what it touches, and what its purpose is. And so before I get to the other item in this particular section of the show, Eric, the one that people may not be expecting, is there anything you want to hit home about automation before I move on?
No, not really. I mean, all I can kind of do is underline what you just said. That I mean, unless you just really enjoy doing the same task over and over and over, and if you do, okay, maybe you're the guy who does do 50 patches of the systems. Oh, okay. I don't know many people in IT who are built that way. So,
No,
like, save
no,
yourself. Save yourself. Do the interesting things by getting rid of the menial things and by automating them
yeah,
away.
yep. The other item I mentioned, I said there's one item here, buying yourself more time long term. The automation is the one everybody was expecting. This other one is managed services. And, you hear me talk about I worked for an MSP, right? Managed service provider. And again, this takes budget. If you are a solo sysadmin, you have to have budget to bring in a managed services provider. But where it can really help you get some time back is maybe you could bring that MSP in to handle help desk and basic triage, right? So those level 1 type issues don't bubble up to your desk. That's one example. Or maybe you have a SAN that is dying and is in need of replacement, but you don't have time to get to the project because of 10 other things on your list. Outsource the installation of a new SAN to a managed service provider, right? Now, it's not zero overhead. You still have to manage the provider, but
Mhm.
it takes a lot less time to go ahead and do that. and you get some time back on the back end after whatever it is, they were working on is fixed, replaced, upgraded, whatever. And again, not everybody will have the luxury of having the budget to bring in a managed service provider, but it is a very effective tool when used properly. Now, I will say, be very stingy about who you choose to be your managed service provider. And I say this because I spent 10, 12, 13 years in the managed services space. I never saw MSPs that I worked for do this. But I have seen and heard stories of MSPs taking on one project or two from a solo sysadmin and then slowly edging that sysadmin out of the organization. So just be aware, do your research, do your due diligence. Who are the good MSPs in your area? Talk to other sysadmins in your area if you know any. Maybe go to a local user group or something like that. Get some information, find out who the good MSPs are. You want one that's a partner, not one that is after your business as an account, right? So keep that in mind. Be a really powerful tool, but don't bring in the wrong MSP, if that makes sense. So,
Probably the fastest way to do that is to go to some of the small business meetups. I don't there's a
yep,
word and I don't know why suddenly I'm thinking meetups, but small business meetings, where small business owners and employees will kind of
Chamber of
have a
Commerce or something like that.
yeah, but and they'll have like events like showcases and things like
Yep,
that, and you can talk to other people. And really what you want is a smaller business. You kind of have to vet them out to be sure they know what they're talking about. That's always a risk, but your small businesses who are trying to help other small businesses are less in a position to take your job than like a major MSP would be.
yeah,
So you kinda walk into it with that, like and they cannot afford to go around making people angry, right?
yeah, yep,
So, and I've worked for a couple of those places, and they're usually fairly, honest and so on and so forth because, yeah, they don't wanna put themselves out of business by
yep.
getting themselves a bad name. Um, not always doesn't always work that way, you know? There are some people out there, and I think I've talked about this on a previous episode where there was like one person, like he figured out I don't know that much, but I know more than these customers do. And he was taking them for a ride partly out of his own ignorance, right? Because he didn't know how to do it correctly, but he knew how to do it well enough. So they
Right,
wound up spending more in hours and effort and everything else because it was never right. And he wound up putting himself out of business because guys like, the guy I was working for would walk in and go, "Well, we'll do it better for less net. We charge more by the hour, but we're going to do a fraction of the hours that that guy
right.
does, right?" He's here 1 day a week. You only have 10 employees. What is that? So
That's a lot. That's a lot.
yeah,
1 day a week
yeah.
for
I
10
mean,
employees? Oh, yeah.
yeah. And like that particular individual was like, well, I don't believe in Active Directory domains. Everything's in a work group. That's why he was there all the time because, well, you manage work groups. You know how those go. So,
It's not fun, I know that.
yeah, I'm trying to share a file with somebody and yeah, well, they changed their password last week, but it's the same account. No.
Ah, good times. Man,
Yeah.
I haven't had to manage a work group, but I don't know how long, and there's a
Well, we
reason for
manage them
that.
by, yeah, we manage them by walking in there with a domain controller and getting rid of
Yep.
them. That's how we manage them. I won't. No, I respect my time too much to use a work group ever again. So
Yeah. So the last area I wanna touch on before we wrap up today is making sure that you are communicating effectively and setting expectations effectively with leadership, right? You are the sole sysadmin. That means if it plugs into the wall, you're responsible for it, right? I'm not saying that's actually how it is, but that's the perception. And perception is, well, everything in this job in some cases, unfortunately.
a lot of times, yeah.
And
Well, yeah, I
so,
mean, it's just kind of a humanity thing is perception is reality.
yeah,
So
yep,
managing perception is very
exactly.
important.
Yep. And so, one of your hardest skills one of the hardest things is going to be telling your non-technical boss, um, you know, what you can realistically do, what you realistically should do on a limited budget, but you have to communicate it in a way that, um, makes sense to them. And this actually is very relevant to something I saw while I was at the Exchange Security Conference in Texas last week. There's a lot of conversation happening about communicating the business value, not the technical details to certain audiences. So, for example, right, I could go, if I was the sole sysadmin, I could go to my boss and be like, hey, boss, you know, I set up that DMARC real good. Currently it's set to P equals num, but we need to eventually change it to P equals quarantine. The DKIM record's all set, and SPF is set to the proper record for 365, and nobody can impersonate our domains anymore. What's that leader gonna do? They don't care about DMARC or DKIM or SPF. You just tell them that, like, hey, we've put the proper safeguards in place to prevent our domain from being impersonated. It prevents our business from being impersonated. Even mentioning a domain might be too much information, right? I've put anti-impersonation safeguards in place on our email. Full stop. That's all I need to know.
Maybe too much there,
And
even.
what's that?
Maybe too much there, even.
Right, right. But you see what the point here is that, when people get a bunch of technical terms thrown at them and they don't understand them, like, they switch off, or they think that you're trying to talk down to them, or there's no good connotation with that, right? And so
No.
speak to the business value, speak to the business outcome, and you're going to have better results, in my opinion.
Well, and we're going to do this also as an exercise in self-preservation. So I'm going to give
Yes, that too.
you a wildly out there anecdote. When I was studying, I don't even know what class it was, sociology probably, or maybe anthropology. There's a book out there called Selling Crack in El Barrio, where an anthropologist went to this is the Puerto Rican slums in New York. I think it's Puerto Ricans, and basically embedded himself like, I'm not here, I'm not a cop, I'm not here to report anybody, I'm just trying to get an idea for what life is like. It's what anthropologists do. We're just observers. And so he kind of gets in good with some people who are not at all savory. I mean, we're talking real legitimate drug dealers here, right? And everything that goes with that. And but he'd kind of gotten into where they'd accepted him, and he's got something like in a newspaper, and he kind of hands it to the leader of this gang, like, look at this. And the guy like flips out at him or something, and is like, oh, and it wasn't until later what he realized was that that gang leader was illiterate and couldn't read, but he couldn't let on to that in front of, right? So
Yeah.
let's go back to your boardroom example. You can't make the chief executive look like an idiot and expect that to go well for you. So if
Yeah.
you go in there with a bunch of terms and blah, 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 he's got some choices to make here. Like, do I pretend to know what you mean to save face? Do I get mad at you at something unrelated to save face? What do I do? What am I going to do? So you need to preserve yourself. And like, your executive speaks business. This is why the people at your conference are saying you got to talk in their language, and you cannot do anything that makes them look stupid in front of their peers, because that's going to come back to you. They're not going to pay for it. You are. So yeah.
Yep.
Don't get shot by the
That's
drug dealer just because you made him look stupid. That's what I need to tell you all. You all should now know this.
that's the story I'm going to go with from now on for this particular talking point. That's a good one. So, the one final thing I would mention in this area is around risk. One thing that it's the business leader, the business owner's responsibility is managing risk for the business. Now, with you as the sole sysadmin, you are going to be in a place to identify risk. And if you are in a smaller organization, you may not have budget to do all of the high availability things, the fully redundant things, right? The multiple failover site things, right? You may not have budget for that. And so in very human, very again, business oriented, business value type language, you need to be able to highlight those risks in a way that leadership can understand them. You give them option A, B, and C. You let them make those decisions, right? And then do the thing that we talked about throughout this whole episode, document said decision, right? So that your rear end is covered when,
Mm-hmm.
well, if you ever need it, right? Hopefully not when, but if you ever need it. It's been documented. So
So
anyway,
the big takeaway for this episode is when you are the IT person, what you wind up doing is managing people and writing stuff down.
yep,
And if you took
yep.
this job to work with the beep, beep, boop, boop, blinky, blinky, there'll be some of that, probably.
There'll be some for sure. Yep. I still think of the IT crowd. Folks, if you work in IT and you've never watched the IT crowd, go watch the IT crowd. I forget the guy's name who lives in the server room. I'm blanking on his name right
Yeah,
now.
the vampire guy. I know you're talking.
Yeah, but I remember the new IT manager, her and the vampire guy are they're in the server room. And she's asking him what he does. He's like, I stand in here and I watch the lights. He's watching the blinking lights, and he points at one, and it's like doing it like changes its blinking pattern. He's like, what's that all about? Like, well, what's that doing? Like, and it's that, yeah. Anyway, it just makes me think about that. So, folks, if you haven't watched the IT crowd, go watch the IT crowd. So, anyway. Well, Eric, always good having you, my friends. We've been doing a lot of episodes like this over the last couple of months. It seems like I don't want to say this is really a soft skills episode, but just useful career advice. And there's still a lot of people that are in that sole sysadmin type situation. And again, this was a community, a community suggested episode. So I'm glad that we were able to accommodate and make this one happen. So good having you on the show as always, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. And those of you watching, hopefully you found some value in today's episode. Again, if there are any episode ideas that you have that you would love to see Eric and myself cover, or Paul and myself cover, right? You can always reach us at contact@sysadminweekly.com. You can also leave a comment on the Spotify and YouTube versions of the show. So do that, or you can leave a thread out on the GitHub discussion forums. With that, we will let you get back to the rest of your day. Stay safe out there, and we will see you again next week for a future episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.